Have you ever had a dream that you had?
Welcome to Stronger Than the Rest, hosted by your bearded brother, Juan R. The podcast where we celebrate resilience, determination, and the human spirit. Each episode, we dive into inspiring stories of individuals who have overcome challenges and emerged stronger than ever. Join us on this journey of empowerment and motivation as we discover what it truly means to be stronger than the rest. Let's start this episode with a bang.
Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of Stronger Than the Rest. I am your host, Juan R, the bearded brother, and I tell you, I am super excited and over the moon about everything that's going on today. First of all, I have to let you know today is my birthday. 53 years old, strong, ready to roll. And today is also the launching of the new podcast, Stronger Than the Rest. Let me tell you, this has been something that's been on my mind for quite some time. It's been years since this has actually came to my head in regards to doing a podcast. And I had several different ideas on what I wanted to do, several different things that I thought about. And this is the manifestation of that final thought process of what it is that I wanted to do. This all started back in the pandemic days when everybody was at home, they were sitting there was nothing to do. And I thought to myself, I know I needed some kind of outlet. And I figured that there were other people that needed an outlet too. And so I thought to myself, why not do a podcast, right? Because, well, of course, everybody was doing a podcast, but I wanted to have something that I could be able to still connect with and talk to people outside of just my basic circle of who I was in the house with. And so when this came to mind, originally it was going to be a faith-based podcast talking about things in the Bible that, you know, people had questions about, but nobody wanted to talk about. And I thought about it and I'm like, you know, that kind of eliminates a whole market of individuals. And so what I did was I actually sat down and wrote out the pros and cons of different concepts that I had. And this concept of being stronger than the rest is what actually, I guess you can say, weighed the most to me. One of the reasons why is because I think everybody in life faces challenges, faces problems, faces situations. And quite often people feel like they're the only ones that's going through what it is that they're going through. And so I wanted people to understand, because I myself needed to understand, that everything that I go through, somebody else has actually been through it already. You know, they're not just, I'm not just the only one, right? There's other people that have been through the problems and situations that I've been through and are currently going through that have overcome those situations, right? And so I came up with the concept of Stronger Than the Rest. And instead of listeners, right, instead of calling those subscribers or those individuals who, listen to the podcast, just listeners, we're overcomers, right? Because all of us on a daily basis are overcoming something. And so I tell you, when it really hit traction was here just about a month ago. I've had challenges, I've had problems, I've run into different things, but yet this thought of doing this podcast was still in the back of my mind. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. And so I started investigating online. I started, digging deep. I started trying to educate myself on what needed to happen in order for this podcast to happen. And I found like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know, right? Things that I needed to do that I had no idea I had to do in order, for me to create this podcast. But when I tell you that everything began to fall into place, it was crazy. Like, just to understand how much money people spend on podcasts and how this came together for me and how much money I didn't have to spend was this confirmation that, this is something that I should have done a long, long time ago. And so, I've had somebody ask, well, why this podcast? The thing is, like, there's people just like me, right, that are living life day to day that don't have the support, don't have the outlets that a lot of other people have. They don't have the ability to go to a therapist. They don't have ability to get a life coach. They don't have really anyone that they can lean on. And to be honest, for a minute in my life, that was me. Like, I didn't have, a lot of support, even though I was in relationships, those people, those individuals didn't really give me the support that I needed in order to really be the best me that I could be. And so I wanted to create a community of individuals who not only support each other, but celebrate each other when they overcome, right? And in episode 2, we'll talk about, exactly what an overcomer is. But I wanted to definitely launch today. Again, it's my birthday. I'm happy to celebrate another year around the sun. And, I have to tell you as well that, had it not been for God who was on my side, right? I know that's going to turn some people off, but here's the thing, right? Whatever I'm doing, I have to have it done based on my faith, right? Because God is very important to me. And so, I had people say, well, you shouldn't make it faith-based, right? But if I'm involved, there's no way it can't be faith-based, right? Because my faith is the foundation of my life. And so I just want to be able to create this community, to celebrate, each individual in this community. And really today, just kind of celebrate not only the launch, but, of course, another day around the sun. And so what are we going to talk about during this podcast, right? There's a lot of challenges and situations that people face in daily life, right? One of the things that we definitely are going to be talking about and be heavy on is overcoming relational obstacles, right? We're going to talk about relationships and how people have overcome the hurt and the pain that they felt in relationships, right? The thing is, most people have relationships, right? Whether it's, an intimate relationship, whether it's a sibling relationship, whether it's a parental relationship, corporate relationships, right? We've all had relationships that have caused us stress, that have caused us pain, that have caused us or caused for us to have, issues that we carry along with us every day. And here's the thing. You're not by yourself. I'm not by myself in dealing with these relationships, right? Everybody has it. Everybody does it. And quite often we get so embarrassed by what it is that we're going through that we really don't have people to lean on. We really don't have people to help us out, right? And then when we overcome those situations, we really don't have people to celebrate us. And so we're going to do that here on Stronger Than the Rest, right? The other thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about overcoming mental obstacles, right? Mental illness in our community is, kind of like a taboo. We don't talk about it. We don't discuss it. But it's real, right? There's mental illness in our community. And people struggle with it on a daily basis, right? And we're going to celebrate those people who have overcome those mental obstacles, those mental challenges. And we're going to help somebody to overcome those obstacles as well. The other thing that we're going to talk about is emotional, right? Emotional obstacles and emotional struggles that we have, right? Quite often, it's our emotions that tie us down and that make us become reclusive from other individuals. I am, I guess what you would call an ambivert, right? I'm an introvert and an extrovert, and what that means is basically, I enjoy being by myself, right? But I still need the company and companionship of other people. And I enjoy being with other people, but sometimes I can't do that too long, right? My social battery will wear out. And so, the emotions within that, and having to deal with that and having to deal with the hurts and pains of emotional situations that we've dealt with, like death and losing a job. Like, most people don't think that's an emotional thing, but definitely it's an emotional situation that, a lot of people have challenges with and that they've overcome, right? So we're going to talk about mental, relational, and emotional, right? Overcomings. We're also going to talk about finances, right? Who has not had financial challenges in their life? I know I do on a regular basis, right? I'm not rich. I don't have money to no ends. And so in life, I've actually faced a lot of financial struggles, a lot of financial situations that, I've had to overcome in order to do what it is that I need to do. Even as far as paying rent, paying car note, paying, electricity and gas. Like these days, it's very difficult in the financial world, right? And who doesn't want to get out of financial trouble? So we're going to be talking about that as well. And so, the next few minutes, I really want to give you guys a little bit of insight about myself, right? Because I know there's probably people that are asking, well, who is this guy to talk about overcoming, right? I haven't been to school to study psychology. I haven't been a therapist or things of that sort. But I've overcome, right? And if you've overcome anything, you can actually help that next person overcome as well, right? By not only just sharing your story, but by telling them what you did to overcome. And sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes all you know is that you held on, right? And so definitely, whether it's just holding on or whether it's just, going to a therapist or whether it's, finding help some other way, whatever you did to overcome, we want to celebrate that here on Stronger Than the Rest, right? So let's get to it. My story. So I'm just a kid that was born on the south side of Chicago. I didn't know growing up that, we didn't have. I mean, we ate meals every day. My mom cooked. I didn't know that my mom was cooking because we couldn't really, go out to McDonald's and grab something. And so my childhood was pretty good. I mean, I can't complain. We weren't broke, but we weren't rich as well. We weren't in the upper middle class, but we weren't in poverty. So I had a pretty good childhood, but there were some complications that I had during my childhood that, I really didn't share. One of the things is I have a speech impediment. I have a lisp, right? My S's don't sound like everybody else's S's. And so as a kid, I was teased a lot, and it really impacted my self-confidence. I was scared to talk in front of people. Quite often I would just nod my head, yes or no. But I had this air of arrogance because at that time I thought I looked great. Like I remember my aunt, who actually nicknamed me Pretty Boy Floyd because I used to like to dress nice, and I figured that if I dressed nice and I looked nice, then people would look over the other flaws that I had, such as my speech impediment. And I had a really a really big head for my body size. I was a little bitty kid. But my head was huge. And so I got teased a lot in regards to that. If you fast forward to my teenage years, like my high school years, I was really kind of a loner. Like I knew everybody that was, in our class. I went to a really big high school, a really popular high school on the south side of Chicago. And I knew who the cool kids were. I knew who the nerds were. I knew who, what we called house heads then. I knew who they were, right? I pretty much knew everybody, but I really didn't fit in anywhere. And so again, a knock at the self-confidence. And at that time, the financial struggles had become noticeable within my family. I remember at that time, everybody was wearing I think it was Izod shirts, it had the little alligator on there. And so I remember going with my mother to the thrift store and finding one of those shirts. And I had polo shirts, just like everybody else, but they weren't polo, right? They were off-brand. And what I would do at night is that I would take the alligator off of one shirt and sew it onto the next shirt, right? Because I wanted to fit in so bad with what everyone else was wearing. And so, yeah, I mean, that was definitely a banger to the self-confidence because I didn't have what the other kids have. I didn't have those things that made life more comfortable, the clothes, the kicks. I remember the Nike Cortez. Man, I wanted a pair of Nike Cortez so bad, it was crazy. But my parents couldn't afford it, right? And so I had to do without, and I had to wear whatever shoes I was given. And, again, I'm not complaining about what my life was like because I tell you, my parents did the very best they could. I mean, my dad worked day and night. He used to work the graveyard shift, in order to provide for us. And he did a great job in doing that. Shout out to my dad, Jose Rodriguez out in Country Club Hills, Chicago. Everybody knows him as Mr. Joe, Uncle Joe. Like he did his very best. And my mom, shout out to Miss Lily, or better known as Belle. They did the very best that they could in raising us and giving us what it is that we needed to become productive citizens of society. Now, don't get me wrong. Quite often, we weren't very productive citizens, and we did wrong. I remember growing up, and my mom doing laundry and finding a small pack of not tobacco in my pocket, and she went crazy. She went buck wild. Called my dad at work, had him come home to whoop the heck out of me. And so, that began to erode of doing things that I was big enough and bad enough to do. And by that time, I started to grow. I was still very skinny, very, very, very skinny, but I got some height on me. And I challenged as much as I could and, was, I guess in better terms, really kind of out there hanging out on the streets and doing whatever I thought I was big enough and bad enough to do. Now, here's the catch to that, is that at 9 years old, I was told that I was going to be a preacher. And I didn't want any part of that, of course. And so, that just gave more fuel to the fire in me out doing, all of these things that, a kid my age at that time should not have been doing. And so the teenage years was a real struggle. It was difficult coming up. Self-confidence, really was a facade. I acted as if I had the self-confidence, but really deep down inside, I didn't have that confidence. And so as I grew older, I learned how to overcome that. I learned how to um, talk in front of people. I learned how to be myself, really, my most genuine self. And so teenage years, freshman in high school to senior in high school, were a bit difficult. And then right after high school, met a young lady, and it seemed as almost instantly she became pregnant. Now I have a son on the way, and I've got to care not only for myself, but for my son. I have to care for his mother. And again comes the difficulty, right? We put on that facade of self-confidence, but really inside, it was very scary because I had no clue on how to provide for a child and another person when really I didn't even know how to take care of myself. And so over the years, I've studied, I've learned, I've pushed myself, I applied myself, and then comes adulthood, right? 21 years old, and I find myself in a very, very, very dark place in life. I was drinking just about every day, to the point as to where the clerk in the liquor store knew exactly what I was getting when I walked in. It was a very dark place for me, I didn't know who I was. I was facing financial trouble, of course, relational trouble, emotional trouble. But somehow, God found me and put me in situations to improve myself and put me in a career that not only taught me how to talk to people, but it taught me how to have confidence in myself again. And so, that's a part of my story, and that's part of why I'm doing this podcast, right? Because I know there's other people out there that have had these challenges that I have had. There's other people that are out there that have seen the struggles that I have seen, right? And at the time, I didn't really have anybody to lean on. Don't get me wrong, I had friends, but there was really no one I can lean on and no one that I trusted enough to say, hey, I'm struggling, right? I'm having problems. And so this podcast is really, one, it's an outlet for myself to be able to express ideas and opinions on overcoming challenges in life, right? But it's also a platform for us to celebrate other people who have actually come through struggles and made it through struggles, right? Here I am today, 53 years old, and I'm still having those struggles. I'm still having those challenges, right? And we're going to have them every day. But here's the thing, and you're going to hear me say this a lot on this podcast, is the statistics are in your favor, right? If you look at all the challenges and all the struggles that you've had from the day that you were born, you've actually made it through 100% of those challenges and struggles. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. You made it through 100% of the challenges and struggles that you've faced since your date of birth, right? Because you're here today, right? The only way you don't make it through is if you give up. And here's what I've seen, right? Because I've given up on quite a few things. Here's what I've seen. I've seen that normally when you give up, it's right before you were supposed to get that breakthrough. Right before the breakthrough is when most people give up, right? They don't see the actual sunshine. All they see is the shadow, right? And so I want to be able to help those people out and say, hey, you're not alone. We're here to support you. and we're here to help you. Here's how we did it. Maybe it'll help you out, right? We're also going to be bringing on guests who have made it through challenges, right? I might bring some specialists on. I might bring some professionals on. But I want guests of everyday people, right? Because everyday people are the ones that's really making it through, right? If you've never had struggles, then it's difficult to explain to someone else how to overcome those struggles, right? And we're all overcomers here on Stronger Than the Rest, right? So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to talk about. Hopefully, this goes over well. I've determined already that whether I have 2 listeners or whether I have 20,000 listeners, I'm going to be doing this podcast. And so hopefully it helps somebody. Hopefully, someone can see the benefit in this podcast. And hopefully there'll be some individuals that be able to say, because of Stronger Than the Rest, I've become an overcomer. Thank you, guys. I'll check you guys out next episode. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Stronger Than the Rest with your bearded host, Juan R. Please be sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode.